Welcome back, welcome back. This week, Greece faced its worst civil unrest since military rule ended in 1974. On Saturday, after a 15-year-old was shot dead by police, protests erupted and quickly spread to other cities. Then on Wednesday, several thousand people marched through the Greek capital to protest at the government's economic policies as part of a general strike. The Prime Minister, Kostas Karamanlis, and opposition leader George Papandreou have both appealed for an end to the violence, but there are fears now for the stability of Greek democracy. And I'm delighted to be welcomed now, joined here in the studio by Constantine II, Greece's former king. Welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Good to see. These riots and so on, and the violence, do you think it was just, in fact, the killing of the 15-year-old boy, or was it triggered equally by economic hardship like there is around the world?
I think the fuse has been lit many times, and this killing of this young 15-year-old boy by a police officer, which is the most unacceptable thing that can happen, is what sparked and it came. But the fuse became smaller and smaller and smaller, so at this point it just exploded. It's unheard of for this sort of thing to happen, and I am absolutely sure that the Greek courts will severely look into this question, and he will be dealt with severely. It's illogical to run around with a gun in front of 15-year-old kids. At the same time, we have the demonstrations that are going on, which are as a result of years, probably, of frustration in the young people. We have also about 1,500, 2,000 young people who are virtually anarchists, who are professional, come out and do these damages whenever they have a chance. But the majority are young students in schools and in universities who have got grievances and have shown it. And they don't wear masks, because in democracy you don't need to wear balaclavas and hoods to do these demonstrations. And they are honestly got grievances and they express them. And the other ones are just destroying public and private property, which has to stop. The state, whichever government is in power, should not allow these professionals to go and destroy other people's properties like that.
In fact, the possibility is, the papers say, that there might be an election in relatively short time in the next
That is for the Prime Minister to decide. I wouldn't know anything about that. And I wouldn't know what the atmosphere would be. I actually myself would hesitate to give any kind of suggestions. I don't think it's up to me. But I think there is a lack of hope in the young people, and there's a lack of a sense of security. And that, I think, is what would be fantastic. I think everybody in Greece would be delighted if they could see a unity of purpose amongst the leadership in our country, whether it's the political leadership or it's the unions or the students, if they would get together and see, and then the public would see that there's a serious effort to find a way out of this, to give hope to the young people and to see how we can progress, because I don't think it's only a Greek phenomenon. And our institutions, our democratic institutions, are very strong, and they will survive. And even if we have more democracy, they will survive.
They will survive. They will survive.
They will
you
survive.
Don't share the fears of people about the fears for the future of Greek democracy.
Not. We have a very decent and good head of state in President Papoulias, and if, as again, this is a hope I'm expressing, I'm not making any suggestions, that under his auspices this could be done, where they would get together and find out, so that the young people could see that there's a serious effort by all leadership, even the student leaderships, intellectuals, artists, everybody should get involved, have a meeting and see if what they can do. I'll give you an example. We have in our country, what do you call it, in the universities, the police are not allowed to enter. It's a sort of asylum there. They could look into whether that is still necessary. Parliament should debate this. I think they should have new measures dealing with demonstrations, and they should be punitive measures, and they should be adhered to. And if they are not, then there should be consequence for that. But that can only come from Parliament and from a meeting where everybody will discuss all these things over the future.
Do the people of Greece think of being part of the EU as a good thing, or does it stir controversy?
No, I think they absolutely consider it a very good thing. Without doubt, it has helped us. We are a European country, we are progressive, and we are democratic, and we will stay like that.
But there is a widening gap between rich and poor, is there?
There is a widening gap, and I think that the most important issue is the frustration in the young people who feel that there's neglect, there's no hope, there's no feeling of security. That is, I think, what is needed for the people to see, the young people especially.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you very much.
It's been another bad week for the global economy, rising unemployment, businesses failing, and now the collapse of the bailout of the big three in Detroit, the three troubled car companies. One man who's predicted the downfall of unfettered capitalism for years is Tony Benn. Tony Benn, one of Britain's most prominent socialists and the longest-standing Labour MP of all time. He retired in 2001, he said, to spend more time in politics. But that, in fact, was an inspiration from your late wife, wasn't it?
That's right. She said that before she died. And it's been a really opportunity to go around and talk to people without wanting them to vote for you.
What do you feel about all the economic news and the credit crunch and so on? I mean, banks being nationalised, I suppose, is something you approve of.
Well, I don't look at it quite like that, but I remember the Great Depression of the 1930s. I met Ramsay MacDonald in 1930 when I was 5 at number 10 Downing Street because my dad was in his cabinet. And you see, that was a political crisis. The thing that really sticks in my mind when I look back on it was Germany. There were 6 million unemployed in Germany. And Hitler said, it's all due to the Jews and the communists. Give me power, said Hitler, and I'll give you jobs. And what he did was to put half the unemployed in the arms factories, the other half in the army, and we had another war. And in 2 world wars, 105 million people died, 2 European wars. And then when the war came, and I was a pilot, we discussed all the time what to do after the war. And somebody said, I've never forgotten it, he said, look, in the 30s we had unemployment, the means test, depression, fascism. We don't have unemployment in wartime. If you have full employment by killing Germans, why can't you have full employment by building schools, building hospitals, recruiting nurses? And that's how we built the welfare state. What people said, very, very simple, we've got to have the same determination to meet the needs of peace that we had to meet the needs of war. And that's how we got full employment, we got recovery. And now we're told the market, or have been told, leave everything to the market. And this is what's precipitated the crisis, really.
Leaving it to the market.
Leave it to the government, get out. And now, I mean, the banks have become a sort of casino. I'm not blaming anyone, because if you could make a quick buck without anyone interfering, you'd understand what happened. But it's led to mass unemployment, repossessions of homes in America. Huge percentage of people are in danger of having what they call foreclosure. We call it repossessions. And this is a really serious problem. It has to be tackled politically. It's not just about who owns what. But the banks are a public service, and I think really people would like to feel that the banks are treated like the army or the police or the fire brigade, a public service meeting your need, not just leave it to become a gambling joint.
So that in fact that's what we should do. One should extend the idea of nationalising the banks to put them in the same state category in a way as you're saying with the army.
I think it's so important. After all, people depend upon, if you're a small businessman, you depend upon the banks to get money to develop. If you're home, you need a mortgage or whatever it is. And you look at it like that, then I think there's a better chance. But it's a very, very big political crisis. Of that I have no doubt.
And what about today's news about these 3 huge car companies teetering on the brink with the Senate having rejected the bailout? Does something like that worry you too? Is that serious?
I think the thing is very, very frightening, and you see fear sometimes leads to right-wing solutions. And of course in Detroit, which has been a great centre of the car industry, Detroit was a sort of core of American economy. And now with a combination of a shortage of oil, unemployment where people can't buy cars, and the whole environmental crisis, Washington is saying, why should we bother? And yet, if you look at the needs of the world for vehicles, supposing Detroit were restructured to meet people's needs for tractors and things, it could make a different contribution, but it would have to be planned, couldn't be left to the market.
Do you find the arrival on the world scene in such a commanding way of Barack Obama, the president-elect, do you find that's an encouraging move?
Well, what interested me about Obama was he gave people hope. And people have been so depressed, so worried. And now here's this young Afro-American came along and said, we can do it. Yes, we can. Now, what happens? We have to wait to see what happens. But You see, there are two flames burning in the human heart all the time. The flame of anger against injustice and the flame of hope you can build a better world. And my job at 83 is to go around fanning both flames, anger against injustice and hope, because people need encouragement. Everybody needs encouragement if you're going to do the best you can.
That's a very encouraging point, at which to stop for the moment. Thank you, Tony, very much for being with us.
Thank you, David.
And that's it for this week. My thanks to all my guests, our many guests. Join me again in 7 days for another edition of Frost Over the World. Goodbye for now.